Hello, welcome to Classical Greek Latin. This is Latin lesson number 10, which corresponds to Wheelock chapter 9, and this is Wheelock's 7th edition. My name is Josh, and I'm the teacher for this course. Today we're going to be talking about demonstratives, hic, ille, iste, and then special use adjectives. So there's nothing really too complicated about this. Most of this chapter is just going to be memorization, but there are some subtle connections I'd like to draw for you that will deepen your appreciation for Latin. Let's look at the word demonstrative real quick though. So demonstrative, as they've said here, means to point out, but let's break this down just because it's fun to do that and it also is helpful. So let's go to our trusty Chambers Murray. So demonstrative. So is just the preposition de, all right, down from concerning. So we're really looking for monstra, probably monstro. So I've looked that up, and let's take a look here. So the word does mean to point out, but let's take a look and see what it really means. Okay, so they tell us here, monstro, monstrare, right? So it is a first conjugation verb that it's rooted in. It comes from the word monstrum. So the verb means to point out. So let's go to monstrum. So we'll slide down here to monstrum. All right, so this is etymology. This is what we're doing, finding the true origin of the word, the true meaning of the word. So monstrum, all right, it is a noun. It's neutered, but it comes ultimately from the verb moneo, which we have learned, right? Moneo, monere. It is second conjugation verb. A warning, or it literally to mean to point something out to someone, right? And if we want to take this even further, moneo comes from men's mind, right? To bring something to someone's mind. But the idea is you're pointing something out to someone, right? Bringing it to their attention. Yeah, so that's demonstrative. So that's what we're talking about today. So in English, demonstratives sound like this, that, these, those. So let's talk about this real quick. So we have three big demonstratives that we're going to talk about. The first two are ille and then hic. Okay, so these are like adjectives and are often used as substantives. Okay, for example, ille, let's just say that is a reference to that or those things far away from the speaker, right? So hic is this thing or these things close to the speaker, right? We'll talk about iste in a minute, which is on the next page. All right, so let's look at this. So I said it can be an adjective or it can be a substantive pronoun, okay? So typically it's going to stand in for a person, right? So vir means man, right? So you could say vir, I'll just write this in here just for visual effects there. So vir means man, right? Nominative singular masculine. Ille is nominative singular masculine. So now that what we've done, instead of just saying man, we're saying that man over there. So ille matches vir. Both are nominative in this case. Both are singular and both are masculine, right? If we were to say that girl, puella, we would have to go to illa, puella, okay? And then if we were to say that gift, we would say illud donum, right? So not just a gift, but that gift over there, or that girl over there, or that man over there, right? So you can pair these demonstratives with a noun, in which case it has to match in case, number, and gender, like any adjective, okay? Or they can stand alone as a pronoun. Pronomen is what that means, for the name, right? So if we just had ille by itself, because we know it's masculine, it would be implied that it's speaking of that one over there, namely that masculine one over there, that man over there would be the implication, right? Wir is just a lot more specific because we could be talking about a nauta, right? A sailor. We could say ille nauta because nauta is masculine, if you remember. All right, so it can serve in those two functions basically. Okay, so that's how these work. Again, ille, that thing over there far away from the speaker, and then hic, this thing close by to the speaker. All right, so let's look at this real quick. So this is a chart. We need to memorize this chart. Not a big deal, because if you note here, let's look at the plural real quick. The plural, masculine, feminine, neutered, and they give you your, all right, so you got your plural here, is the exact same as the first and second declension, right? So first declension is the feminine. I, autum, is, as, is. You already know that. All right, let's look at the masculine in the plural. I, autum, is, os, is. You know that already. A, autum, is, a, is. In the neutered, you already know that. So the only thing that you're learning is ille. So I in English, ll. That's the root of this word, right? Let's look over at hic in the plural. Again, same thing. First declension, feminine. I, autum, is, as, is, as you would expect. Masculine second declension. I, autum, is, os, is. Now, in the second declension here for the neutered, a little different. This is the only difference in the plural here. Hike instead of just ha. Right, so you would expect just an ah for the neutered, but here it is hike, okay? Now the thing that does say always stays the same in the neutered is that the nominative and the accusative are always identical, all right? So you have hike and then hike. That's the only thing different for the entirety of the plural, okay? And this is true of iste as well, iste. All right, we'll look at that on the next page. So let's look at the singular now. So the singular follows the first and second declension also, okay? So let's look at the feminine here, first declension. We'll go nominative is right? And then let's jump down to the accusative, and then with a long mark over the top of that We've seen that before. The only thing that's different here is ilius, so you have ius, right? ius. For the genitive, so of that feminine one. And then you have ille, e, for the dative, right? To or for that feminine one, okay? So, but note now that the genitive and dative for both of these, this is true of iste on the next page, they're all the same. It's the genitive is ius, and the dative is e, right? Huius, 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 huic, huic, huic. We'll talk about the C in a minute, okay? But essentially, you see that I there. It's the same as ille, 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 huic, 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 okay? And then you have the masculine ille instead of illus, okay? And then the neutered, you have illud, nominative, and then illud for the accusative, right? So they've underlined everything here that is different, which requires more memorization. But the genitive and dative, ius, e. Okay, so let's talk about this hard C here. All C's are hard in Latin. Basically, okay, so we have hunk, honk, and then hoc, okay? So if we look here, if we think of this nasal N, it used to be right? So or marks the accusative singular, okay? The neutered is strange. But what's happened here is for hic, we've added that hard C, the palatal, to the M, which changes it to an N, right? And that allows you, hunk, to make both the nasal N and the hard C sound together, right? You could not make the hard C sound if your lips were sealed, okay? So it's basically, again, I'm just pointing this out to you, so there's really even less to memorize. You don't even have to memorize hunk and honk, because it's really just a nasal, the M, that's become an N because of the addition of the K, or the C, the palatal, right? Okay? And then note here, nominative singular is heek, okay? That's just a standalone thing to memorize, okay? Feminine singular for heek, hike, hoke, right? Little different. Hike, right? You would probably expect hawk, right? If we're just taking the first declension and adding a hard C to it, right? Okay, so you have the irregular genitive and the dative with the hard C added to the I, okay? And then you have the hawk, hulk, okay? And again, it's basically you're adding the hard C to the O, 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 okay? So when you're looking at charts like this, it's not important that you're memorizing all these patterns. I mean, it's important that you memorize this chart. You don't have to memorize every reason for the phonetic shifts, the phonetic connections, and all that, right? But think in that manner and see how many connections you can make that will make it easier for you to memorize these things, right? So for example, if you look at the dative here is the same as the dative in the third declension, E, right? So I sometimes like to think of the demonstratives as a mixed declension between the first, second, and third declensions, right? Because the dative in the singular really follows the third declension, right? And even with the genitive, in the third declension, it's is, right? But here, like rex, regis, genitive singular, right? Of the king, regis. Use, it is different, but it does have a similar sound to it. Okay, so that's the demonstratives there. Ille, so ille, illa, illud, heek, hike, hulk. Point out the obvious. Feminine singular nominative here. Easily confused with a neutered plural down here. So keep that in mind. All right, let's look at the next page. All right, so iste. So iste is that near you, that of yours. So in reference to the speaker, it's like ille, but it is addressing the second person in the context, right? So if there's person A, B, and C, and person A and B are talking to each other, they may refer to C as ille, that over there, right? But if C and B are next to each other and A is talking to B, he would probably refer to the C beside B as iste. Let me write that out for you, right? So if you have person A talking to person B, and C is right there by B, this is iste. Okay, that thing away from me, but near to you, right? And then if C were off here, it would be ille, because it's far away from both person A and B. Okay, I think that makes sense. So because it's saying iste, that is implied near you, it also acquires a negative connotation sometimes, like that bad thing or that bad person, right? You will hear a husband and wife talking to each other when a child is misbehaving, and the husband may say to the wife, that son of yours, right? If the son is misbehaving, he'll say, he's your son, that's your bad personality trait that's causing him to do that, right? So that it has the idea of negative, like that bad thing, iste, right? So if iste is being used as a substantive pronoun, like that man, iste, instead of saying ille, that man, iste, has that connotation that is probably not the best man, okay? All right, so let's go on here. So keep that in mind, all right? So again, all three demonstratives follow the pattern of magnus a basically true with exceptions. We've talked about that, right? All right, let's see here. Usage, translation, and word order. Okay, so with these words, they're just saying typically it's going to come before the noun. For example, hic, liber, this book, because it's emphasizing the book, so it's going to come first, right? Oftentimes, adjectives will come after the noun in Latin. Here, with demonstratives, it almost always comes before the noun if it's coupled with a noun. And the point of that is because the demonstrative is being used to point it out, to be emphatic about it, right? So pretty straightforward there, right? So ille, liber, that book, right? And then if we were to say iste, liber, it would be that book of yours, probably a bad book, right? Why do you read iste book, right? Iste, liber. All right. So hunc civitatem, okay? This state, that's going to be the direct object though, right? Accusative. And then hunc, huic civitati, dative to this state, right? All right, let's flip the page real quick. All right, so they give you some more examples here. Read through these and also parse these out, okay? So this would be illius libri. Now, illius, as we noted before, it's genitive singular, but it could be any gender, or it's genitive singular of that, but it could be any gender, right? So it could be masculine, feminine, or neutered, right? Libri, though, is masculine. So this is going to be genitive singular masculine. So as you go through these, see if you can parse them to see what they are. Okay, we talked a little bit about the pronouns here, right? So pronouns, pro nomine, in place of a noun or in place of the name, right? For the name, for the noun. We talked about this earlier, just a minute ago. The basically is substantive, right? So if we were to say bonus by itself and treat it as a subject, that would mean the good man, even though man is not there, right? So it's a substantive, even though bonus is typically an adjective. So here we have demonstratives which act like adjectives. They match the noun. They can be used as substantives, and these are actually used as, pronoun substantives much more frequently than are just straight adjectives, right? Okay, so yeah, these are more often treated as pronouns. You'll see them as such, right? So hic, so this man, nominative singular masculine, right? Hic, this man, right? Haec would be nominative singular feminine, so this one, or this feminine one, namely this woman, right? Femina, and so on, okay? So yeah, take a look at that. Pretty straightforward. Special use adjectives. What that means is that these 9 adjectives are going to have the same genitive and dative irregularity that ille and hic and iste have, right? So going down here, so take a look here. So you have, again, use and then e, right? Remember that. Illius and then ille, right? From ille, illa, illud. So you have the same irregularity here as there. So this, again, is going to follow the first and second declension, and that's why they do not write out the plural forms for us, right? Because this is going to be I orum is os is, I aurum is as is, and then a orum is a is. Okay, and the same thing over here. So the plural is going to be just like the first and second declension. Nothing new there. The irregularity is found here in the genitive and the dative. Okay, and then also, if you note here, you have the ood for aliud. All right. So basically, very similar to ille, hic, and then iste, because of that weird genitive and dative in the singular. So let's flip the page and look at this. So they refer to these, can we call these demonstratives? I call them adjectives, right? 9 adjectives. As unus nauta, one sailor. This is just as an acronym to remember each of these words, right? The first letter of each of these words. But if you think about these words, this is a useful acronym to help you remember these words. And I would go ahead and memorize that these words have that weird dative and genitive singular. Okay. But keep in mind also, think about it, what do these have in common with ille, hic, and iste? Right? So in the essence of these words, they're in the same essential realm of the demonstrative. They're pointing something out. They're demonstrating something apart from the speaker, right? Generally speaking, if you will. So we have unus, which means one, right? So the genitive is going to look like unius, and then the dative would be uni, right? And then nullus is no or none. Literally, it means not any. So it's just ulus with a ne tacked onto the front and becomes nullus, right? Just like uter is either one or the other, and then neuter is neither, not one or the other, right? So nullus and ulus, basically the same word. One is positive, one is negative. Neuter, neuter, uter, basically the same word. One is positive, one is negative, okay? And if you look at alter versus alius, you have another or other, right? So another, basically what this is it's other, but it's a other. And the reason we put the in there is just because of an English phonetic preference to not have vowels colliding like that, right? So the in here in English is actually not part of this word. It's just their phonetic to separate the A from the O phonetically. So what we're saying is this is an other, but it is indefinite, right? So if we compare that to alter, the other of two, right? We're making a judgment between two things, right? So it's there's only one other thing. There's this first thing and then the other thing, alter, right? Versus alius is going to be there's one, and then there's another, and maybe another, and maybe another, and maybe another, but we don't know. It's indefinite, this is definite, which calls us to a state of kind of judgment here. So I'm kind of getting into the weeds here, a little bit of the philosophy of language here. If you look at that, alter versus ali, right? So you have iste, that thing close by you, kind of judgmental, sometimes negative. You have the same kind of judgmental attitude here with alter, and you can sense that with the T being there, right? Just like iste, alter, and then alius is much more neutral in the sense of its judgment, much like ille, alius, right? It just has those soft L's in there, right? All right, let's go back up here. Solus aum. All right, and then, yep, everything else is basically straightforward. The only thing that's going to have a weird neutered, unexpected neuter is aliud. Okay? Everything else is going to have the neutered as you would expect it. All right, with the genitive use and dative e as being the unusual thing. Otherwise, we're looking at the second and first declension here. All right, let me flip back over here real quick. All right. Looking at our chart. Let me show you that. All right. Another thing to keep in mind is alius for the genitive borrows the form from alter. Note that as well, that it's borrowing, right? Those words are very similar, so they're allowed to do that. Okay, let's go on. You can read this paragraph on your own. Okay. A very good thing they advise here is to decline or pair these words, your new vocabulary, with these demonstratives, right? So that king, other king. So that actually makes me think, if you look at alterius, I mentioned just a minute ago to think about why you might borrow from alter for the genitive singular, is because in this particular word, ali, us, the nominative does have the appearance of this genitive, right? Us, alius. So they use alterius for the genitive to distinguish it from the nominative. All right, to avoid confusion there. All right, but let's go back to our vocab. So yeah, okay, so you have that king, that other king, right? Not that king of the other, but that other king, right? And then you have ista soror sola. Okay, that sister alone. Okay, and again, ista often has a negative connotation, right? All right, so yeah, practice that, combining your demonstratives with your nouns and adjectives. And let's look through some of the vocab here. All right, so locus loci, again, note the plural. This is masculine, but the plural appears in the neutered, right? So places or region, right? Regions. The ancients had, this is somewhat common, the collective, right? So literae means the letters. This is where we get our word literature from, right? It refers to the individual letters that spell out the words. And then, so you refer to a document that you would write in the plural as literae, not because you wrote multiple documents, but because within the document there are many letters, right? It's composed of little letters, right? So just, yeah, so same idea here, loca, locorum, right? Places, regions, in the plural, neutered, and then place, passage, in literature, in the masculine, okay? So here you have passages in literature in the masculine, and then places in more like geography in the neutered. Okay, morbus morbi, straightforward, okay? So they talk about this, the latter, the former. So hic, so when you're saying the brother and the sister, the former, right, that would be the ille, would be the brother, right? So you say the brother and sister, okay? And then the former, that would be ille. That one over there would be the brother, because he's further away from what's going on in the second part of the sentence, right? And then the latter, which would be hic, right? Or in this case, it would be hike. All right, so hike, this, or the latter, that is this one closer to the rest of the sentence, right? So this, the latter, right, the one closer, this one closer to the second part of the sentence. We're speaking like in literature here. And then that one, or the former, that one mentioned first, but further away from the second part of the sentence. Okay? Okay. All right, so we have iste, ista, istud. Okay. Then you have your 9 adjectives here. Enim, post-positive conjunction, so it's going to be the second word in a sentence, never the first. Okay. In, preposition plus accusative, so words of motion into something, into the accusative, but within something or in something in the ablative, right? So in plus accusative means into or toward, against, and then in plus ablative means in or on, within something that's more stationary, right? Nimis, nimium, non-declinable, they're always going to appear one of these two forms, adverb. And again, they talk about this can be, basically means too much in a negative or in a positive sense, right? Excessive would be negative, and then like exceedingly would be in the good sense of it, right? So the boy is exceedingly good, and then you could say maybe the boy is excessively good, right? So maybe he's trying to butter up his teacher or something like that. It's a negative, like excessive versus exceeding. Pretty straightforward there. So that is basically the lesson for today. Take a look at your exercises, work through those. I will provide those on Patreon, and that is available in the description below. The link for that is in the description below. It is a $10 a month fee, and you have access to all the exercises for these lessons, where we go over the answers and expound upon them and review, right? So there's the rest of your exercises there, ending a course in the typical English to Latin, and then you have your Sententiae Antiquae, shorter section this time. But that is your homework, and again, if you like to read through some of this extra curricular stuff at the back of the chapter on Roman history and all that, knock yourself out, enjoy that. Okay. I do not cover this in the Patreon. I cover the exercises in the Sententiae Antiquae. Okay. And then our next lesson will be fourth conjugation and IO verbs of the third conjugation. All right. But that is lesson 10 today for Wheelock chapter 9. And we covered demonstratives, hic, ille, iste, and the special adjectives, which are similar to the demonstratives in nature, the use adjectives. All right. I hope you found this helpful. Put any comments, questions, or even suggestions that you may have in the comments below, and I will take a look at those and reply to you as I can. Consider subscribing to our Patreon if you'd like help with the homework, to check your work. And thanks. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time. Thank you.